Looked like he wanted to go back to Purbu. And a high shot, scores! Lands at the feet of Purbu. The Spitfires take flight. Corcoran with Douglas in front. Footy scores! John Footy makes it 6-3. Here comes a 2-on-1 for the Spitfires. Angle with Afanasiev. Angle to the middle. Angle shoots and scores! Tyler Angle makes it 3-0. But Tomasino bearing down on him. And there's what a first rounder can do. He bats into the backhand by Medina. With 2:24 left. What a debut for Philip Tomasino. Here's Boca driving to the net. Boca scores! Captain Boca evens it at 1. Rose going to get their first chop it ahead. Be careful, Luke Moncada. He's got 3 shorthanded goals. In alone, give him 4. Luke Moncada. Angle, top of the circle, left for Cooley. Cooley shot, scores! Will Cooley makes it 2-0.
You're tuned in to another edition of OHL Voices. Today we're with the voice of Windsor Spitfires hockey on your TV, Chris McLeod, who has been providing the call on Spits games since the 2012-13 season. Chris is a former game night host on London Knights broadcasts and is both a broadcaster with CKSY Radio in Chatham and works as a realtor outside of his schedule in Windsor. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Josh. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on today.
So I guess you came to Windsor that scene there following some of the back-to-back Memorial Cup hype in 2009 and 2010. Perhaps you can share a little bit about your broadcasting path prior to your time covering the Spitfires.
Well, it's funny because it began covering Junior B hockey in Chatham, the Chatham Maroons back in the day, and I was the game host for that. And one day the play-by-play guy didn't show up, and neither did the color guy. So I guess neither of them got the message. And my producer at the time said, well, you've got to run upstairs now and do the game, and totally unprepared. And I'm overly prepared for everything. So I ended up sitting in the booth doing everything, running downstairs, doing it. It's Junior B. It's a little different, but I did that, and they never called that guy back. So I ended up doing play-by-play, and I moved away, worked in London for a little while, started doing Western Mustang broadcasts on Rogers TV. And then they came up with the post-game show Friday nights, and then eventually it became the pregame show. So I do the pregame and the post-game, and got to fill on the broadcast a couple times. And in the meantime, my full-time career ended up back in Chatham. And oddly enough, that producer from that local Junior B game was now producing Windsor Spitfire games. And he said, we have an opening if you'd like to come down and talk about it. So I ended up down in Windsor, and I guess that was 8 years ago now. I still feel like when somebody asks me, I always say, it's about 3-4 years, because it doesn't seem that long, but it's been 8 years, and it's been a lot of fun. It's weird though, going from one side of the rivalry to the other side of the rivalry. But both teams and the people in the background have been just amazing.
It's a small world, the broadcasting world, and the hockey world is small too. You and I have a strange connection. There was a time in my life when I called London Nationals games. So
no way.
We all start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned, the 2 Memorial Cup titles in 2009 and 2010. You were fortunate enough to be around the team, during the 2017 Memorial Cup victory on home ice. The Spits edged the OHL champion Erie Otters. Really an unforgettable, very high-scoring tournament with some of the NHL's up-and-coming stars like Dylan Strome, Alex DeBrincat. The Spits had Mikhail Sergachev, and of course a guy like Matthew Barzal and Thomas Chabot also played in Windsor over the course of those 2 weeks. I know those Memorial Cup games would have been aired on Sportsnet, but I have to think that season and being around the team during that time would be prominent for you.
It was a lot of excitement going into that. A couple years earlier, they felt that they probably had the team that should be hosting, and it didn't happen, and they built towards that 2017 season. And it was rough going for a couple of years there, going into games, and just knowing the talent the other side was so much better. So it was a little tough in the booth to get hyped for a game like that. And going into that 2016-17 season, and I had Todd Warner was with me up in the broadcast booth, and we kept looking at each other and we're like, this is a lot of talent. And it took a while for that talent through the season to, first of all, get healthy because there were a lot of injuries, but to gel as a team. But you knew they had more. And the record wasn't that great. And what did they finish? Was it 5th or 4th that year in the regular season? They weren't at the top of the league, but they they had the talent, and we just knew it was gonna be there at some point. And then they got bounced. They were up 3-1 versus London. That rivalry comes back to bite you again, and they got bounced in the first round. And they had, and I think it was 44 days or something crazy. Once the Memorial Cup began, you're right, yeah, it was on Sportsnet, but for the first time ever, a Your TV network or Your TV station was going to do a pregame show. So I got asked to do that. So I was there for every game prior to, and got to be part of that broadcast, which put me right in the mix of things. And it was a lot of fun, and just meeting some of the people behind the scenes. Like the very first night, I'm sitting there talking to Warren Reichel on the air, and we're live, and Mark Bergevin and Claude Julien walks in behind us. And of course, Warren being Warren, he just starts talking to them like it doesn't matter we're on TV or not. And there they are. They're like just seeing the faces around there and the excitement in Windsor, and then they kept chugging along, and they kept winning, and they kept winning. And then to finally see them win it on home ice, it was really neat. And I think the Windsor fans were deserving, and to finally get to see it after having a couple Memorial Cups away from home, but have it on home ice was really, really neat.
To see kind of the genius of Warren Reichel and his staff there, Rocky Thompson and Trevor Letowski and the coaches there, and just the group that Warren put together, those guys, they all kind of brought something different to the table, on the back end, a guy like Jalen Chatfield, really underrated guy, just steady. And of course with Jeremy Bracco and Graham Nod, and a really talented group. And it was just fascinating to see how they managed to pull together. Of course, the guy behind it all, the current OHL shutout record holder, Michael DiPietro, a local guy. And maybe you can speak to what he meant to the Windsor community over his few seasons there. One of the greatest in franchise history.
Yeah, Mikey is something special, and I don't get too close to the players. I keep my distance, but Mikey was a kid in his rookie year, 16 years old as a goalie, who came in and took that number one job. But when you'd walk by the room prior to, Mikey would say, "Hi, Chris, how are you?" And he'd look you right in the eyes. And that tells you something when a 16-year-old does that. He's got something. He's got some moxie, and took over the crease. And there was still some talk right in that Memorial Cup season is he too young? He's not drafted. He's too young. But man, that kid loved playing in front of his home team, his home crowd. He got a key to I think it was Amherstburg, his hometown, and it's so deserving. He was just the nicest kid ever, and his family is just outstanding. His dad used to stop by and talk all the time, and Mikey was a special kid, and obviously a trade that we all knew was coming. But he made a return after the trade. I think it was a day or two after, and made a point to stop by the broadcast booth. And we got him on one more time, and he was just a good kid. You saw it right from the start.
Yeah, certainly a personality, and a guy who was always one of those guys who went out of his way to talk to the little kids and stuff. I always enjoyed being around Mikey, and deep in the playoffs and at special events and whatnot. But by all accounts, a fairly successful season for the Spitfires last year with 34 wins, and some promising young players rising through the ranks, guys like Will Cooley and Jean-Luc Foudy, and then some really underrated contributions from, say, a Tyler Angle or Luca Heno. I know you're no homer. I know you call the game as you see it, but were last season's Spitfires an easy team to get behind?
They were. They worked their tail off. When you looked at that team in 2017, there was talent, and you could just see the talent, and they could cruise to victories. And nothing against that team. They didn't work as hard. And I'll take hustle any day of the week. And a guy like Tyler Angle, who drafted late, a guy who worked for everything he got in that Memorial Cup season. I think he was even sent to Junior B right around Christmas time, and he worked his tail off to get back into it. And Tyler's another good kid, but he is that kind of guy that Windsor fans can get behind. Then you got an Afanasiev who was just sniper. Like that guy could put a puck on net. You got a Rafkin back there in the blue line, and it was just fun to watch. They were never out of it. They battled every single time. I don't think you saw anybody in the top 10 in scoring, but you got a guy like Cole Purbu, who is one of the hardest guys to get the puck off. And then you got the flash and dash of Jean-Luc Foudy and Will Cooley, who you can see he's going to be a future NHL sniper. And then like the rookies that came in too, like Pasquale Zito, that kid was excitement. And the fans, they got behind him. He's a Windsor Spitfire kind of guy. And then it'd be remiss if you didn't mention Luke Boca, who was the captain, and he's going to be sorely missed. A kid who'd been around since the Memorial Cup days, but he's a guy that when he was drafted, Warren Reichel said, "Windsor, you're going to love this kid. You're going to love it. Let him grow on you." And that's Windsor Spitfire hockey. Is Luke Boca really identified with that?
Yeah, we touched on Warren Reichel and, of course, the legacy he leaves in Windsor, one of 3 GMs in CHL history to win 3 Memorial Cup titles. Of course, the new man filling the chair in the general manager's office is not other than OHL all-time assist leader Bill Bowler. And in the first few weeks of Bill's tenure there, I chatted with him about, some of the recent big-time success the Spitfires have enjoyed, the 3 Memorial Cups in recent history. But, he was quick to remind me that the Spits haven't actually won a playoff round in like 8 years. So needless to say, he's hungry. Like he's not satisfied. And I'm sure, some of the picks that were made as he was sort of coming into the role, as you mentioned, Zito and Wyatt Johnson. And then of course this past draft with Ryan Abraham leading the way. I'm sure a lot of those young guys are all factoring big into kind of his future plans for the franchise.
Yeah, and you just made me realize that I've been there 8 years and I haven't seen a playoff series win. I never even thought about that. I feel partly responsible for that. No, Billy's a good...
and in part, I should say, I mean, it's kind of a surprising thing when I mention that because it's not like you think of the Spitfires the last 8 years and think that they weren't competitive. I mean, they've had some good teams.
Oh, for sure, and they get into the playoffs with teams like London, and Kitchener's been hot, and Sarnia. I think those are the 3 playoff teams they played here in the last few years, and it's unfortunate this season didn't go because, like I said, I would like to see the hustle there. But Billy's a good guy. Billy is a really, really good guy. He's always open to talk, and he really values those young players. And I know he doesn't want to give them away. When the trade deadline comes, you see OHL GMs start to talk about, okay, well, they could bring in a big piece, but it's going to cost us our number 1 pick. And Billy values those players. He says, what if I give them away and a couple years down the line, we've got a good nucleus. So he values those guys. And last year's draft was a little tough. There was some question about ownership and it took a while to get the guys signed. This year, the top 3 picks, the export pick, they're all signed. They're ready to go. It didn't take any time whatsoever. I know he's building a front office and an atmosphere that is welcoming and appreciative and wants to build that legacy of the Spitfires. Not that it ever went away, but he really wants to make it something that is known. As soon as a player is drafted, they know going to Windsor and they know what it's all about. And that's his thought process when he's making decisions with his team.
The 2020 NHL draft, of course, approaching next week. We touched on Will Cooley and Jean-Luc Foudy as well as both guys highly regarded prospects that scouts have watched all season. What is it about those 2 guys that jumps out for you?
They're 2 totally different players. Will Cooley is a kind of kid who can shoot it from anywhere, and he likes to shoot it. He's got the big body. He's got an NHL caliber shot already. Just to put it all together, he has no fear of dropping the gloves. You saw it in the top prospects game, and that's what you have to do to make that next step. Jean-Luc Foudy is much like his brother, a former offset track champion, like long and slender, and he wants that puck, and he doesn't give it up too easily. And he's a different kind of kid. He's going to have to change his game a little bit if he wants to advance and move on to the next round. But he has got all the skill in the world. And you see him, even as a rookie, he had no fear curling back late in the game and trying to take it up the ice. And Cooley's the guy riding shotgun who's ready to fire off that shot. So it's been a lot of fun to watch the last 2 years, these 2 guys who are totally different players, but to see them grow. And again, unfortunately, we didn't get to see the season through. But yeah, that draft's going to be big for both of them.
Well, as we continue to monitor all things COVID-19 in Ontario and Michigan and Pennsylvania, really jumping at the bit for that December 1st start date, what is it that you're missing most about calling the action these days?
The pregame meal. I'm not gonna lie. The pregame meal. It's funny, but like you get to meet some of the broadcasters from the other team. They're sitting there and have a meal, and like Mike Stubbs from London comes in, or Fred Wallace, who you've had on, just to come in and just to talk and to hear what's going on with your team, what's happening, why is this guy playing third line, what's happening with this guy. That's a lot of fun. And I've been lucky to do it with Todd Warner, who's a Spitfire great, former 4th overall NHL pick, played a bunch of years, former Olympic silver medalist. And then his cousin, Nick Warner, stepped into the box with me. So I've had a Warner by my side the whole time, and they make it fun. Like, it's not a job. I don't feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm talking to a couple buddies. And that's what I miss. And running into some of the parents, Tyler's dad, Tyler Engel's dad has been around, and Michael DiPietro's dad, they always pop in and a quick hello. And just seeing some of the guys kicking around, Steve Bell from the radio side, it's a good little group. And the hockey's just a bonus. And we've seen some good hockey the last few years, but it's the meal. And then when Nick sneaks some popcorn in, that's always fun too.
Yes, I share your sentiments, the camaraderie of the OHL community. A lot of great people in this league, from the hockey ops side to the broadcast booth to the front offices. A lot of great friendships, and certainly I identify with you on that one. I mean, the calendar about to turn over to October, and we're typically off and running by now. But hey, let's keep hoping for the best. And I appreciate you joining me here, Chris. I look forward to hearing your call again very soon.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.
You too.